All right.
Hi, I'm Marta Waller. I'm here with Dr. Joe Haraszti. You know, in about 9 minutes, we're going to, if not solve the country's economic problems, we're going to see if we can't change the mindset. You know, unfortunately, in the last 12 months, 5 million more families have sunk to below the poverty level. That's now 1 in 7, every 7 families are living below the poverty level. And we had sustained economic growth for about 25 years. About 2 years ago, it like hit the wall. We heard hope and change, and it didn't happen. And it's like the national psyche is in a huge, not just a funk, but a depression.
Yes.
So let's talk about.
Yes. Well, you know, there are many, many different reasons and so forth, and we are not going to be able to cover it in 9 minutes. But I think what we can point to is from the lessons of history, and we could take it back to the 60s. We could take it all the way back to, you know, when this country was formed 200 years ago. But just to keep it simple, you know, there seems to be economic cycles about every 40 to 50 years. If you go back to the 50s, you know, there was the American dream about every family owning a home and the children being better off than their parents. Then along came John F. Kennedy, who in '61 talked about the Camelot of the great American dream, of the great hope that we will place a man on the moon, we will surpass the Russians, and we will beat everybody in education and so on. So it gave us a tremendous sense of hope. And even after his assassination, Johnson carried on his legacy. And he was a genius when it came to passing through legislation and so forth, and Johnson got the thing done that Kennedy only talked about. So we had the Great Society, we accomplished the Civil Rights Movement, there was Medicare, so all kinds of things were looking up. And then we went through the Nixon fiasco, but that got the Vietnam era done, and then came Carter with all the gas lines and the inflation and so forth, but it all stopped when Reagan came on the scene in the early 80s, and he again infused hope into our consciousness. Reagan was a tremendous cheerleader. He was not just a great communicator, he was a tremendous cheerleader. He helped us start believing ourselves again. So the problem all this time has been us. You know, we only have to look in the mirror to find out what are the problems of this country. They're us. You know, it's us. And the problem right now is that right now we have lost our self-confidence, we've lost our confidence that we are world leaders, that we are Americans who are going to be able to rise from the ashes. And at this time we're starting to believe all the negativity that is coming our way from around the world. And of course there's a big issue with Islam and other religions and so forth. But I think at the crux of it is that we have lost faith and confidence in ourselves as Americans.
You know, I was thinking about what you were saying, and whether you agreed with Reagan's politics or not, whether you agreed with John Kennedy's politics, any of them, they all made the American people feel like they were great.
Yes.
I don't see that happening now with any of our leaders. Our leaders are so busy being politically correct, or as we said about President Obama, and I think no one goes into this expecting to do a bad job.
Right.
But they're all so concerned about offending someone that none of them is doing a great job of infusing the public with that feeling of great self-worth.
Yes.
That sort of can-do
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
And the American public seems to be really beaten down.
Right.
And, you know, you're right. And they're all saying, well, just because you tell me to feel better doesn't mean that I'll feel... But even during the Great Depression, as bad as it was, as a whole, the country rose up
Right.
and pulled themselves out
Yes.
of it. And I don't
Yes.
see, I see President Obama saying, well, you know, this will get a little better, that'll get a little better. But there's no real great sense of getting one's hands dirty and really...
Right.
Because
Right.
whether you agree with war or not, John Kennedy got his hands dirty and he fought and he knew how to really be a man.
Yeah, he was a man in a pole.
was a man.
He knew how to play.
Right.
He knew how to do the horse trading that was required. He could do it all. He was a brilliant man. I mean, he's obviously a genius in many, many ways. But again, the common denominator, I think, here is the fact that Roosevelt was a great psychiatrist for the country. He was able to, with his fireside chats, he was able to motivate the country. He again started getting people to believe in themselves, that there is hope for the future, there's hope for us. No matter how bleak it seems, no matter how bad everything is, we will we will get back on our feet again. Farmers will be able to farm their lands. They will be able to put bread on the table. The factories will work again. He put people to work. And Kennedy was able to motivate us again in a very powerful way. Reagan was again able to do it 20 years later. And now I think the disappointment is that we were hoping that Obama had the same characteristics. He's been compared to Kennedy, he's been compared to FDR, he's been compared to Lincoln, and unfortunately he has fallen flat.
He has none of that.
He has none of that. He had all this great promise. He even got the Nobel Prize before he earned it. And
Well,
now
even he
we
was
feel
a
this
little
tremendous,
embarrassed about that.
exactly, we have this tremendous feeling of letdown as a nation. Our cheerleader, our psychiatrist is nowhere to be found.
So it seems to me that basically we don't just elect a president, we elect someone who truly understands the human condition and can tap into that, who can be there as the person everyone can look towards,
Yes.
even if they don't necessarily agree
Yes.
with that person,
Yes.
man or woman.
Yes. And until the current president, this country has always gotten it right. In a crunch, this country, the electorate, has always come through and always chose the right person. This is the first time when I feel that they have not done that.
Well, and we were talking the marketing of the president
Yes.
and the election, it was
Yes.
totally different. This president was elected because he manipulated the internet brilliantly.
Brilliantly.
And the internet should be used that
Yes,
way.
yes.
That's how you get to people.
Yes.
But we saw an enormous tide of first-time voters, kids,
Yeah.
turn out to vote, and he counted on that.
Right.
And I think it's wonderful they're voting, but will they continue to vote in local elections?
Yeah, I think the difference between the making of the president in 1960, a la Theodore White, and the making of the president in 2008, which hasn't yet been written, is the use of the internet, and it is sort of the ultimate reality show.
Profound.
It is an ultimate reality show where we cannot distinguish between fantasy and reality anymore.
And it is profound.
It is profound.
But it is also a little distressing because we have always elected very strong leaders.
Exactly.
One way or another.
We've never
they were
gotten it
strong.
wrong before.
No, and they had history.
Yes, yes.
You might not have loved their history, but they
Yes,
had
they
history.
had history.
And they weren't to be trifled with.
Right.
You know, you may not have loved Reagan,
Right.
but he scared the daylights out of the Russians.
Yes, he did.
And
Yes, he
that's
did.
what broke up the USSR. He just
Yes.
broke it up by
Yes, yes.
spending them into the ground.
Yeah,
And
by force of will and
and
by his
ex-
communicating
Right.
ability and whatever. I mean, he's a brilliant man, even though he was already struggling with early Alzheimer's, and I could tell that as a physician.
yes, and he.
But yet I had the greatest respect for him even then.
Of course, and he exposed
Yeah.
them for the Banana Republic they really, truly were.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I think, so we go back to this 1 in 7 families living in poverty, and short of saying you almost have to will yourself out of it because your government can't get you out of it. And it has to be sort of it almost has to be the same kind of groundswell that pushed this administration into office that gets us out of this.
And again, maybe that's where the Tea Party comes in. As much as I don't particularly care for the Tea Party, I think they are touching a raw nerve within the electorate, within the public. They're responding to a need that our current leaders are not aware of or not able to reach.
They have the right idea.
Yes,
They are going
yes.
directly to the electorate.
Yes, yes.
And they will have to respond to what the electorate wants. I
Exactly.
mean, they'll have to. They'll have to modify what they say and do to fit what the electorate wants. They, no matter how dramatically you disagree with them, eventually they will have to fit the electorate.
Right.
Well, we've run out of time. We haven't solved all of the world's problems, but certainly the idea that we can
Yes.
rise up and get ourselves out of this.
Yeah.
But
I really think that we need to go back to what Franklin Delano Roosevelt said many years ago. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. We are a great nation, and we can pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. We can rise from the ashes. We just have to start believing ourselves. And it's not going to be some great government largesse, the great billion-dollar, trillion-dollar bailout. It's going to be us.
and not let ourselves be manipulated by the government.
Exactly.
Well, on that really powerful note, I'm Marta Waller,
And I'm Dr. Joe Haraszti.
and we thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time where we'll work on even more of the world's problems.